Hey everyone, welcome to Nikki Bostwick Unfiltered. This is my new podcast. I'm so excited you're tuning in, and today's guest is Coco Brown. And it's so funny, we just actually met a few months ago in Laguna at a Great Love Club event. And we were just like sitting next to each other. I was with my daughter and you were with your third child?
Second.
Yeah,
my daughter.
Your daughter. Yeah. And I was like, you look familiar. And then Coco was like, well, yeah, we actually have friends in common. And
so
it was
many.
just so crazy because Luca was one of the people that we definitely have in common. And if you don't know, I've talked about Luca a lot, but Luca is my craniosacral therapist. And I mean, when I started seeing Luca, like, she was helping me with my son, and I was not ready to have a second baby at all. And then she was like, let me process your birth trauma with him. And then it was like, okay, I'm ready to have a baby. Let's go. And Coco, you did her training recently, right?
Yeah, I had done her training that weekend prior. And and I'm in the process of like getting all that situated to do cranio, and I'm so excited.
Yeah, so
it's amazing
Coco
work.
Is a mother, and she also is a model, and she also is a prenatal and postpartum practitioner. And her journey into this world of prenatal and postpartum care was a little rocky from her own experience. And we're going to be talking about that today. And I'm excited because it's basically all about pregnancy loss and just her experience with it, but also now like your philosophy around it, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And we've talked to Elena Bellis in the past, and that was like really interesting because she had a stillborn, Lincoln. And I was pregnant when I was talking to her, and before the podcast started, we were talking about maybe this could be triggering for some people, but really, it's a healing conversation and something that you've personally experienced, and you're just sharing from your heart. And I think that anytime someone does that, it's just so beautiful. And everyone, whether it's someone who's not even planning on getting pregnant or having kids, like, everyone can really benefit from it. Our society as a whole can. And it just kind of, when you said that, it reminded me of me interviewing Elena when I was pregnant, and I was like, I don't know if that was a good idea for me, but literally right before having my baby, but I was like, it was actually perfect for me, and it was meant to be for me to have that conversation with her. And I think if you're tuning in, like, this is just meant to be for you to be listening to this. And I'm excited to hear more about your story. So you have 2 kids.
I have 2.
And your experience with pregnancy loss was after your first?
Between.
Okay, so tell us about it.
Yeah, I had my son. He's 4. He turned 4 in November. And then he was a surprise. Super, super surprise, I call it, because I was on birth control.
Oh, wow.
So he came to us just after my husband's father had passed away. And I really feel that was like the reason. Like, I feel very passionate about the fact that this sweet spirit soul like came in and was like, oh no, this is my contract. And like, he was very much for my husband. And obviously for our family, but I can't even explain like the amount of healing that came to my husband from our son being born. Like, we found out, I was like, and my husband was smiling ear to ear. We had known each other 1 year.
Wow.
It's really intense. But
what kind of birth control were you on?
Oh gosh.
Like a pill?
A pill.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had missed 2 or 3 pills. I'm not going to lie. But I just didn't realize that you could you really can get pregnant when you miss a couple pills. So I had, it was Valentine's Day. So,
when you
conceived.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Because I was like, hey, I missed a couple pills. And he had a couple lychee martinis and, just wasn't careful. So, but he came to us and it was beautiful. My pregnancy was amazing. My birth was traumatic, hospital birth, and everything that I didn't want to happen, and all the interventions and all the things. Tale as old as time. And so shortly...
Did you have a vaginal birth?
I did, yeah. I did end up having a vaginal birth.
But it was still all the things.
Yeah. He was pretty stuck. And actually, so was my daughter. But that was redemptive. But yeah, it was just one of those unfolding 40-hour like crazy births where we got to the hospital and I just completely closed up. I just felt really uncomfortable and scared and cold and starving.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And all the things.
The cold. I
was freezing there. And being at home then with my second was like just worlds different. So highly recommend that. But yeah, so then after I had him, I had like a pretty rough postpartum. And I think that was probably the seed that planted in like me then going into postpartum healing and being a postpartum practitioner and working in nourishment and stuff, because I was like severely malnourished and did all the things that I wasn't supposed to do too early. Breastfeeding was hard, all the things that make postpartum really difficult, and I didn't have support, and so I think that was definitely the seed that planted the giant tree that feels like it's like overflowing now as I move through what I'm supposed to do in this life. So shortly after my son turned 1, we decided that we wanted to try again. And I got pregnant right away, which wasn't not expected, but I just got pregnant right away. And I ended up losing that baby at 6 weeks. So we had told family, and I had a spontaneous miscarriage where I had no idea. I just miscarried, and that was really intense. However, processing that for me felt cohesive, because I mentally and physically everything was happening at once.
Yeah.
And so it was really shocking, but this is something that I would never say to somebody, but almost everybody in my life was like, happens to everybody,
Yeah.
It's a mystery.
Oh my gosh.
Happens to us all. Like, does it? And also why?
Can we backtrack really quick for people who may not have experienced a miscarriage, even at 6 weeks? Like, what does that look like? Like a spontaneous miscarriage, like a lot of blood?
Yeah.
Like, it was like very apparent.
Yeah.
To
so
you.
I had woken up at like 3 a.m. and I felt really crampy. And I actually, because I had MRIS, I could correlate it to how it felt in beginning labor.
Okay.
The first kind of stage of labor. But if you hadn't given birth or gone through a labor yet, I would say like an intense period cramping and coming in waves, which is not maybe as common in a period, but more in like a labor where it's like comes and goes. And I went on the toilet and I was bleeding, and it was so shocking. Like, it's so shocking.
Yeah.
And you want to tell yourself all the things, but in that moment, like, you just have to sit with yourself and hold yourself. And just, because oftentimes you're alone, and I was at that time. It was 3 a.m. And so I immediately called my mom because I needed support. And it was really hard. It wasn't the hardest one that I actually had gone through for me. But yeah, I'll just never forget that night of just that shock. Mm-hmm. This feeling so shocked, and knowing, like, I was like, there's no way. There's just no way, because it wasn't a spotting. It wasn't, it was really intense, and it was really, it was a lot. And so, and I would say for anybody experiencing bleeding, there's an intuition there that you can lean into, but you don't know until you know, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and that's what I tell clients and stuff. Like, you really just, you don't know until you know. So just try and lean into the intuition, the small voice, and until you're able to get the support you need from a practitioner or a midwife slow down, just slow down and just be with yourself and this, you know, sweet spirit that's either staying or going.
Yeah.
And so so that happened. And then, oh gosh, having my son, very healing. I just remember the next day we were at the park and I just sat there and I just watched him and I was just sobbing, like just crying and just grieving. That was the first experience of grief I had really ever had in my life. Wow. Losing, you know, a grandparent or something like that was really difficult, but never, this was just my first big loss. Like, and I was due around Christmas time. So you don't just lose the baby. You lose these forward memories that you make. These dreams, these visions, photographs in the mind. Like I had already photographed Christmas in my mind and framed it and put them on the walls. Like, you know what I mean? We go there and so I would say, especially for grief, I like to view it as a dance with somebody that you don't know. So it's like in the beginning, they're moving too quickly and you want them to slow down, or they're coming on too strong and you want them to soften, or it's too soft and you want it to speed up, and as time goes on, grief never fades. You just get more cohesive with your partner, right? You know, and you're able to flow and dance with this grief. And it comes and goes. And so I viewed it like that whole year. So it was one full year where then I got pregnant again. And this time it was amazing. Like I really felt that spirit within me.
Did you wait to get pregnant again?
I didn't really know. I think it was like 2 months.
And then you start trying, and then a year later.
Something physiologically I wouldn't recommend in the actual body healing process. I really don't feel, well, I know I wasn't ready and hadn't healed properly. I actually hadn't healed enough post my son's birth, which I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's just so much healing interweaved with fertility. And so I had an ultrasound and the baby was fine. And I got the heartbeat and I was with my mom and it was COVID, which was already hard. And something just didn't feel right. It really did. That small voice, wow. Like it really didn't, something just sat uncomfortably and like shifted in me. That just didn't feel.
After the heartbeat.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, but I was hopeful. And I think it's okay to be hopeful.
Yeah.
And so I held on to that, and we actually went to my midwife the following ultrasound. So we waited a few weeks, and then we went back, and the baby didn't have a heartbeat. And
so
that
like
was
8 weeks at this point.
I have never like scream cried like that. Yeah. It was such an intense emotion that kind of like moved through my throat. It was so intense, and I didn't know what to do. And she just held me, my midwife, Lindsay, who you have on, and she just held me. And I wanted her to like give me all the answers. Like I was like, why? Like, what the heck? Why again? Like, what's happening? And she didn't say anything. She just said, go home and grieve. And so I did. I just went home and I just grieved. And that was really hard. That's probably when I started to really hone in on what it looks like to heal and grieve after a loss of that mind, body, spirit, you know, aspect of something like this, a pregnancy loss. It affects it all. It affects your body. It affects your spirit. It affects your mind. You are reeling with thoughts of why and wanting to know answers. And that's like in your head, right? And I think it's okay to appease that a bit. And, you know, I think it's okay to go on a search and get the blood work and try and figure out, you know, is there something that's not in alignment? Just don't go crazy with it. You know, there's like a balance. And then the spiritual aspect of release and releasing those memories and letting go and, you know, talking to that spirit. And
then, like, the trauma, though, of having the courage to try again after something like that.
Yeah.
Even.
And I was still pregnant.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah. So
I decided to have a home birth. At this point, I think I would have been about 9-10 weeks. And so I said, I want to do this at home. I don't want to do a D&C, which is where they remove the baby. And I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to have surgery. I just wanted to be home, you know, and that had been the plan with the baby anyway, to do a home birth. And so I really wanted to honor that within me. And I waited and I waited and I waited. And it took, I think, 5 weeks.
Oh my God.
So I was sitting there on my birthday, which you'll love this because it's like all dates, and dates are just fun.
Yeah. But
I was sitting there on my birthday, which is May 6th. And I had this baby, you know, that I had just found out passed away. Is it? Oh my gosh. It's a great date. Yeah. I love that date. And
oh my gosh. So 4 weeks later on your birthday, May 6th.
On my birthday, I'm sitting at the beach here in Laguna. I'm sitting at the beach. And I was reading this poetry book and just needed some time to myself. I'm like grieving this loss. I'm asking baby to please let go because I had symptoms as well, like pregnancy symptoms. And so I'm like, I just need my body back. I need to heal. Like, I need you to release. And I did a lot of ceremonial things to help baby release. I did a steaming, which was, I highly recommend Ayani steaming for the release in a missed miscarriage, which is what it's called when you lose your baby but not physically yet. Okay. So it's called a missed miscarriage. So essentially it's as if it's been, your body missed it, like it didn't get the memo and your body's holding on to this baby that is not thriving. And so I really felt like it was spiritual that I was holding on to this, you know. And so I just sat there and I just said, please come back to me. Like, please come back to me at another time. I promise I'm going to do all the things that I need to do. And I will call you back in. And ended up miscarrying a couple days later. That time I went into like a labor because I was further along. So it was much more intense. And I actually had contractions, which I think that people should be prepared for. Women should be prepared for, because I really felt shocked by that. Like, I didn't realize that I was going to have contractions and like have the urge to push and have to push. And I didn't know what I was going to see. I was shocked by it all.
Were you doing this all by yourself, or did Lindsay help you?
Oh, Lindsay was like an amazing support. Yeah. But I wasn't really like, I didn't know what to ask. I didn't ask her like, what's it going to look like? What's it going to...
So you were just at home and then you experienced this, and then you were basically giving birth.
Yeah, you are. And you are basically postpartum.
Yes.
And that's a huge takeaway, is that when I just found out that the state of California is giving up to 5 days for miscarriage or stillbirth, I was like, I mean, yay, but also what? What? You need more than 5 days.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, you're postpartum. And my midwives, Ashley and Lindsay, they both were like, no, you're postpartum. So get your bone broth, get your socks on, get in bed, you know, and you need to hone those pillars of postpartum, of warmth and nourishment and support from community.
Oh my gosh, no one talks about this.
No.
I mean, and no one knows what to experience.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like,
what they will.
You can have a letdown. You can, there's so much healing in it. Physically, mentally, spiritually. You have to take that time to heal all three of those aspects of your being. And same, thing again, like once I highly recommend when bleeding slows or stops, doing the yoni steaming, treating it as a ceremony to cleanse the body. And, it's also very healing, steaming.
Yeah.
It can heal so much of that uterine, and pelvic bowl. And it's great for a miscarriage. And then also like preconception for when you do try again. Mm-hmm. So I used that to kind of give me this space, like I would take that time to sit, and I could feel that my body was getting healing, but also I was able to take it to like a spiritual level. And this time I took longer. This time I waited another 4 months, and then my husband and I actually got pregnant. We weren't trying. We weren't being super careful, but I really, I was trekking, and I didn't know a whole ton about my cycle. That's probably the third miscarriage is what really catapulted me into
learning
all things hormone and cycle. So I still hadn't jumped into holistic maternal wellness at this point. I was really focused on just, sadly, which I don't want anybody to experience this feeling of what's wrong with me. Mm-hmm. But that's where I was after my second miscarriage. What's wrong with me? What happened? What's wrong with my womb? I blamed so much of my womb without even knowing about, the triad of the thyroid and the ovaries and the liver and the gut. There's just so much more. Mm-hmm. And spiritually, and stress and inflammation. We're dealing with so many layers as human beings, epigenetics and genetics. Upbringings, environment, it's whoa, it's like a croissant.
And people come into this world from different places. Mm-hmm. Like you're saying, you were already steaming, you already had a midwife, you're already doing so much, and yet there's a whole new world that opened up for you. And I think that we can sit there and think we know everything, mm-hmm. or we can go in a more curious space, and not be in that space out of fear and out of blame and shame, mm-hmm. but in a place of expansion, mm-hmm. and not excitement, but in a way excitement of a whole new chapter opening mm-hmm. up if we allow ourselves. And you're obviously in such a tender spot, mm-hmm. And that's beautiful that you opened yourself up to that without, yes, you were still in the what's wrong with me. And in some capacity, it's probably interesting to explore, like you said, mm-hmm. because maybe someone wouldn't go to the place of, let me get my blood work and thyroid done because something is up, but maybe doing that without the blaming piece.
Right. And at this point, I hadn't explored yet. I wasn't ready to dive into the world of fertility. Mm-hmm. It's a really complex world, specifically in the medical sense. When you go to your OB, you're here, you just get so much information that it can be so overwhelming, and the immediate response is going to be IVF. It just is. It's either keep trying or IVF. There's kind of no middle ground, and it can feel very black or white. And you come home and you're sitting there going, I have massive decisions to make right now, and you don't. Pull it back, and again, that slowing down and simplifying. We've gotten just so complex, and I ended up getting pregnant. And I did lose that baby as well. So 3 miscarriages. This one was at 9 weeks. It was also a missed miscarriage, and I got the heartbeat. So same thing. I got the heartbeat at 6 weeks. This time, that was a little bit earlier. And then went back at 9 and no heartbeat. And then I ended up miscarrying only about a couple days later. So it was much shorter time period. And I felt numb after that one. Just numb. I just didn't,
no shock.
It was almost as if this is my normal now. And I just remember waking up a week later and thinking, no, I refuse to let this be my normal. I am going to heal. I'm going to heal. And I am going to be okay. And someday I am going to help other women go through this. And it was just like so intense. This wave of knowing, like, F this. I was gonna say fuck this, but I was like, no, can you cuss on this?
Oh yeah.
I'm like, is this like, but I was like, no, fuck this. I'm not doing this shit. Like,
like this
no.
isn't where it ends.
This is not where it ends. This is not. And I know that there are other spirits that are waiting for me to heal. And yeah, the following week I booked, like, I ended up doing, my friend describes it as like the snake under the rug. Like, any bump you see, you're gonna hit it, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I did. I was like, I'm gonna see an acupuncturist, and I'm gonna see. So the takeaway from this, though, is like, I want to be very clear about this aspect of healing is I felt like I did overcomplicate a bit because I was so scared. And I felt like I just needed to, like, hit the hammer on everything to make sure, and go really intense. And I don't really feel like it's about that as much as it is about simplifying your life, simplifying your foods. Mm-hmm. Like, how many ingredients is in that? You know what I mean? Like, if you take what I did to heal my hormones and my body and actually, like, looked at it from, like, a really wide lens, you'll see that I literally just slowed down and simplified my life.
Wow. I
had boundaries. I simplified my foods. I ate whole foods, whole organic foods. I cooked at home. Mm-hmm. I didn't eat processed foods. I didn't eat pretend oils. I mean,
like, what's the biggest difference?
I would say, for me personally, on a nourishment level, I wasn't eating enough. So yes, I was, like, going to Starbucks, and I was eating processed foods. I wasn't eating McDonald's, but I was eating tofurkey and like Beyond crap. Yeah. Like, you know, thinking I was being healthy. Mm-hmm. I was eating iceberg lettuce with dressing and calling it a meal. Mm-hmm. Like, no. Yeah. My body was not thriving. I was depriving it of good sugars. I was depriving it of animal proteins and animal product like collagen. Yeah. And unpopular opinion, sorry, but you cannot heal without collagen. Yeah. You cannot heal the adhesions and the fascia and the, like, without collagen and gelatin. And it's really hard to hear. And it was hard for me because I was vegan. Oh, okay. I was vegan, and then I was vegetarian, and then I was, like, trying not to eat meat, you know, whatever. And I wasn't eating. And Lindsay actually messaged me, I think after my second or third miscarriage, and she was like, how much meat do you eat? Yeah. I'm like, well, and this is how I answered. I said, well, I only eat meat like twice a week, 2 or 3 times a week, as if that was the healthier way. Yeah. But what she was referring to was like, you're not eating enough, you know? My eyes were just open. So that's when I kind of jumped into the pro-metabolic world of eating, which, for those who don't know, pro-metabolic eating is eating for your metabolism and for your gut. So yeah, so that was my first step into the realm of maternal wellness, was the nourishment aspect. And I started there. And my thyroid, so I ended up getting diagnosed with hypothyroiditis and Hashimoto's.
I had Hashimoto's.
Hi.
Who doesn't? I don't know what hypothyroiditis is.
Hypothyroid. So basically, I didn't have hypothyroidism, but my thyroid was so inflamed that you can get hypothyroiditis, which is like a temporary form of hypothyroid, I guess, and generally caused by like the Hashimoto's going undiagnosed, and also not healing that in any way, shape, or form. When I dove into thyroid health, I was like, oh, I'm doing everything opposite of like what this says. Like the sleep, the rest, the eating, the blood sugar balancing, like crazy. So, and my OB saw my numbers of my antibodies Hashimoto's. They were like 168 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, really intense.
Oh my gosh.
And so bad. And I had some like tissue missing in my thyroid. And she was like, well, let's start you on some medication.
Oh gosh.
And I was like, no, I'm not just give me a chance. I just want 6 months. And I worked with a functional medicine doctor, and it was 6 months later, April, 1 year after my second miscarriage was diagnosed, essentially, and I got my numbers back, and my antibodies were less than 1. This is from diet, changing my lifestyle,
That's insane.
and decreasing my stress.
How do you decrease your stress?
Simplifying my life. Boundaries was huge for me. I was a yes girl. I think I say this all the time when people are like, would you ever move out of California? And I think when you live in a place where nothing is stopping you from doing, you're just like, do. And in other states, they have seasons to, follow. And we're cyclical beings as women. And so we're meant to follow seasons and cycles. But here, when it's sunshine all the time, and you get invited somewhere all the time, and you have friends that live in LA and Orange County and San Diego and all these things, we just do so much, and we're always go. So that was big for me, was really pulling back and tuning into my seasons and my cycles, despite like not being able to see them. You know what I mean? And learning about my cycle and following that, eating with my cycle, moving with my cycle, having boundaries with my cycle, knowing which part of my cycle that I can say yes to, and when I should rest, and when I should be warm. So that was a big aspect of healing, as well as play, like going back and rewinding a little bit. I took up watercolor. I took up pottery.
Oh my gosh, and you have a 3-year-old baby and you were doing that? That's amazing. And learning all of this new stuff. And
he was 2 at the time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it was so healing. I took that time. I would say instead of maybe going out to dinner with a friend, I would go to pottery.
I love just I like staying in and saying no. Like I'm that type of person, and I feel like I overextend myself a lot.
Yeah.
But just that time being home with family and just like being cozy is so nourishing, and like probably why I'm not dying. Like it's like But I totally resonate with everything, like your diet, like being like vegan and then vegetarian, and I mean I still struggle with eating meat. I'm literally going through that right now, where I'm like, I know I need to eat it, but for me I just don't like it, right? So everything I have is infused with bone broth. That's like my number one thing, because that's a way I can get it in. And then my dad makes kebab, and I'm like, okay, I love my dad's kebab. Like I eat it, and they make it for me because they like want me to have meat, and that feels like part of my lineage.
I want you to have meat.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I want it, But then I'm like, I just don't want steak. I don't want chicken. It freaks me out. Like red meat is obviously what I really need, right? Especially for my blood type, but I just like don't like it. But
it's really hard.
I want to eat liver. I want to eat all the things because I know
it's
so
encapsulated now, so you're good. Just like take
but it's still not. Well, I mean, it's good.
People think of like eating, and we shouldn't say eating. You should eat meat. It's really about animal product, right?
Yeah,
like
it's true.
We're meant to eat nose to tail. We're not meant to be going back to ancestral living. Is like just the biggest aspect of healing for me, is like taking it back to that innate being and what I'm supposed to be eating and consuming. And so it's not so much about muscle meat. You actually don't want to just eat like a ton of muscle meat. You won't be able to really metabolize it without the proper amount of like animal fats, like tallow and ghee and dairy, raw dairy, and raw cheese and collagen and gelatin. So
which I do. Like, I love the raw cheese.
Those are so much easier to prioritize, too. You can throw gelatin and, egg yolks in a drink. And I get that question a lot with clients who are like, my kid won't eat protein. Like, they just don't like protein. Like, what can I do? I'm like, there's so much that you can put in a smoothie.
Yeah,
like,
that's so true.
Ice cream. Also, give your kids ice cream. Make it. make it at home. There's tons of like egg yolks and beautiful dairy, and make it with honey and give it to them. Like, we have this massive fear of sugar. It's kind of wild, but the liver needs sugar.
I know. Oh my gosh. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
I used to be terrified of eating like a banana or just like fruit.
It's so sad.
And I remember the day that it changed for me. I was like, this is nature's gift to us. Mm-hmm. And no one should be afraid of fruit.
No.
It's so good for you.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, like balancing it out and not only living and becoming a fruitarian, maybe, but
yes,
incorporating
nothing in extreme, people. Yeah. Nothing in extreme.
And I think that's the main takeaway.
That was like, remember there's like a documentary, I won't name it, but you know, everybody watched like a couple documentaries on Netflix and then became vegan because they basically, but it was like so extreme. Like, if you eat 19 eggs, it's worse than, like, you know, and you're just like, this is so extreme. Okay.
I mean, if you like take a step back, it's so interesting because it's like, okay, Netflix just like told people what to think. Like, watch this, everyone did it, and then it's
what?
Like,
media told you what to think?
And then it's like, okay, now we're gonna launch Beyond Meat and all of this, and Bill Gates is like invested in all this stuff, and you're like, wait, now I'm like, no, there's no way I'm vegan if that guy's like promoting. You know, it's like, absolutely not. But yeah,
it's like gotten so and everything is so interweaved, right? Like, in media is like, you can't. It's all about intuition.
It really,
and that's the thing, is like, people come back to yourself. Even in pregnancy loss, come back to yourself. Listen to that small voice. You know, what is going on? Ask yourself. Ask your womb. Ask your baby. Talk to your baby.
Feel? Like, I mean,
I felt depleted.
Yeah.
I did. And I felt depleted. Like, physically, I felt depleted. And I just had an inkling that it could be my food. I knew in my heart of hearts that I wasn't eating enough. And because as women, we're just like taught to cut calories, and we need so many more calories than you think and that you were ever taught. Like, especially if you're in your fertile period, calling in a baby, bringing in a baby, birthing a baby, nursing a baby, you know, like, it's wild. And I think because in the past we've taken that and we ran. Like, my mom took that and ran, and she was like, I can eat Del Taco every day, twice a day, because I'm breastfeeding. And that was kind of their generation, right?
It was.
Well, then when that backfired, they raised us, and then they were like, you can't. Like, don't do it. And you don't want to eat Del Taco every day. But, you know, you can eat much more than you think that you should. And so that was really big, and relearning that was really hard, by the way. Like, teaching myself that, like, it's okay to gain weight. It's okay to nourish my body. It's okay to, like, stop running miles and miles and doing like intense workouts. It's okay to come back, slow down. When I say that the way I healed was slowing down and simplifying, I mean every aspect of my life. I literally slowed down. I went back to doing yoga rather than intense workouts.
I had the same thing. You know, like, I love that shift. I mean, like, I used to strength train every day of the week and like wake up at 4 a.m. and like strength train, but I used to be a yoga instructor before that, and it was like going back to yoga is,
you're like, okay, this is like, and that's like the divine feminine, right? Like, coming back to you and being like, there is a time and place for your strong masculine. And I really feel like I've leaned on that a lot in my losses, and even through motherhood, being like, okay, I'm like leaning into my, you know, masculine in this, and I have to be strong and whatever. But there's a time and place for that divine feminine to come back in and tell you, like, okay, let's slow down. Let's bring it back. And that's what I did. So after that miscarriage, I decided I was going to take a year. I was like, I need a year. I need to heal. And I deep dove. I took every course you can imagine on nourishment and pro-metabolic eating and healing the thyroid, hormone healing, womb healing. I took like womb massage. I just dove in. I was like, if anything, hopefully I'll use this in the future. Yeah. Because it was like a lot of hours that I put in.
You're like, my daughter will benefit from this.
Yes. I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever do anything with this. I must have known innately, you know, like I must have known that I was like putting it in. But I was like, if anything, just for my next, like to be able to have another baby and we'll learn all that I can. So I ended up doing a blood ceremony at the end of the year. So
what's that?
That's like where you essentially honor your cycle prior to conception. So I did like steaming and I did like free bleeding, and it's woo-woo, but it was for me at the time. And
so you do it during your period?
Yes. Yeah. So while you're bleeding, it's like a blood ceremony. You're just essentially saying like, this is hopefully
my last cycle
for a long time. Yeah. Likely a year. Yeah. About that, you know. And so just honoring that, and some of the aspects I was like, this is a little woo-woo for me, but I'm doing it and I'm just like embracing it. And it was great. You offer your blood to the earth and you're calling in your baby, and it was really beautiful. I felt very strong. I was monitoring my blood work too. And so everything was looking great. I was like, okay.
Who did you do your blood ceremony with? Like by yourself, or you invited?
I did it by myself, but I was seeing Kristen. She's like a pretty well-known herbalist, acupuncturist, womb healing persona on Instagram. And I booked a session with her, and we kind of went through the herbs that I was going to use specifically for the steam, for my teas, how to do like the free bleeding and the blood ceremony. And it was really beautiful. And I just like knew. I was like, this is it. Like, I just knew. I was like, this is it. I just know it. And then I got 6 negative pregnancy tests.
Oh my gosh.
I was pregnant, but I was like, what is happening? But one of the things that I think was, which is something to look into, my luteal phase was really short. And that can be a factor of miscarriage. And so over time healing, I had lengthened my luteal phase with, I upped my progesterone with nourishment, and I even used like a really nice natural topical progesterone. And so with my other babies, I always found out I was pregnant like before I even started my period, or like missed my period. Wow. And with this one, it was like 2 days after my missed period, I didn't get it positive, because I think my implantation was a bit later because my luteal phase was longer, and which is great because the womb has more time to prepare for baby. And so found out I was pregnant, and it was hard. It was really hard. I was not expecting how difficult it was going to be to go through that pregnancy.
The first like trimester or the whole?
I would say probably the first 20 weeks. Crazily enough, I ended up having a miscarriage. Wait, I know. It's crazy.
With your fourth?
Yeah. Wait. Yeah. She was a twin.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, okay, why hold on. It was...
Did you bleed?
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me? So you were like, I lost both, or you...
No, I didn't know. I didn't know. Okay. I didn't know it was twins. So
I mean, yeah. So you were having a miscarriage, and you're like, oh my gosh, I lost this baby too.
Yeah. I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. I don't know. I've done everything. You know, I really felt like that. How far along?
Like 20 weeks?
No, I was like 7 weeks. Okay. Yeah, 6 or 7 weeks. It was early. God. And I felt faint. It felt way different, by the way, than any of my other miscarriages. So I was like, I don't know. And there was that intuition. I couldn't grieve. It's like I knew that she was there. Like, I just was like, I don't know. And I was taking progesterone with her. I took an oral progesterone just with my previous losses. It's pretty common. And so I'm like, I'm just going to still take it. Why would I? Like, why would I still take it? I don't know. Something. I just knew. And then 3 days later, I didn't want to get an ultrasound with her because I had so much trauma from the ultrasounds. I literally had PTSD. Yeah. And my midwife knew that, and we were like very like, okay, we're not going to do it unless we need to, and because there's no point in allowing my body to go through that amount of stress, you know, before the ultrasound, and then like I'm hyperventilating and it's bad. But I did it. I went and I got an ultrasound and they wouldn't let my husband in.
Because of COVID. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But what like year was this?
This was last year.
So 2023, they wouldn't let your husband in? Oh yeah.
2022.
2022. Yeah.
But
still.
December 2022. They wouldn't let him in. So I had to go by myself. And I was like shaking.
Yeah.
It was one of those moments of like just dread. And I'm sobbing and I'm telling the ultrasound tech like, I'm so sorry, I have had 3 losses and this is just like really you know. And she's like I'm not supposed to do this because you're supposed to then wait for the doctor, right? She's like, I'm not supposed to do this, and she turns the screen, she's like, there's your baby, she's right there. She didn't say she, but I knew it was a girl. And she's like, heartbeat is great. And I was just hysterically crying. It was amazing. It was awful, but it was amazing. And I was like, oh my God, what is this journey? Which is why I said in the beginning, if you're bleeding, take a step back.
Yeah.
You know, take a step back and tune in and then seek, support. But oh my gosh, what a whirlwind. I'm like, you're going to be really crazy, girl. Yeah. Like, you put me there, like, what is happening?
That is crazy that you ended up with a miscarriage still.
Yeah. And then I still had, like, this, like, umbilical, like, membrane my whole pregnancy.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was so weird. And, my midwife, Lindsay, was like, this is so crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I know. It's so crazy. We were, like, trying to find it. Like, after I gave birth to her, we're like, I want to see it. Like, what is it?
Did it come out?
Probably. Yeah. I mean, like, amongst all the other things that come out, something like this big. We just didn't notice it.
Were you in the bathtub? Or?
Yeah, okay, I was in the bathtub. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so then pregnancy was great. It was really hard. Pregnancy after loss is not easy. It is not. You want it to be. Like, you're like, I want to enjoy this, but it's so hard. And I just, like, want to validate that because...
Are you anxious
really
the whole
intense.
time? Or?
Yeah, I was really anxious. Every twinge, every pain, you don't feel them for an hour. You don't, like, all that's just intensified after loss. And so... seeking support is massive. I mean, I say this all the time in postpartum. It's the absolute number one thing that you need to do for yourself is find your support and make sure that they're going to be there. And in something like this, even more so. I'm like...
But what does that support look like?
I would say, so for me, it was like my therapist and moving through that. I actually sought out a hypnotherapist and we worked together on the fear and like we worked through, she did like hypnosis going into like a room and finding my power and leaning in the intuition, and so we worked together. So I worked with her for 4 weeks during my pregnancy in preparation for the latter part of pregnancy and then my birth. So we worked together in that mid area, and then you find yourself a good midwife.
I know.
I'm like, my midwife was a massive support. Even we did like meditations. Like, that's not something that you would ever do with your OB. Like, no, she lay on the table and then like she's like moving through this like fear meditation with me. She's holding my hand, she's hugging me, she's literally holding me up during the ultrasound, because we ended up having a couple more. I needed to do the 20-week, and with each one it's like,
did she do it at her office?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those? Okay.
Yeah, she has a little ultrasound. My 20-week I did through, a specialist, but yeah, she was able to do that with me, which was just like, this would not have been this experience. Yeah. So I guess by support, I mean, yeah, find your team, your birth team. I really
believe that. That's how I felt. I mean, well, Lindsay specifically, like I just had her on, like you said, and before we started, she was like, okay, let's just do a quick little like meditation.
A little grounding.
Yeah, just a little grounding. And she just said, a little prayer, and it was just so beautiful. And I've interviewed, I can't even tell you, I've been doing this since 2017, every week or every other week, and I've never had anybody do that. Yeah. Never. Yeah. And I've interviewed all the holistic people, and I was sitting there, I was like, I should be doing this for people.
Yeah.
Like, we all resonate with it, but she just has this really special energy, and having her on your team is, but Luca was part of my team, and I just felt like she holds that same presence and just holds space. And
totally,
for me, like, the second she walked in the room, I was having my husband Theragun my back, and then as soon as Luca walked in, I just was like, I don't need anyone to touch me. Like, even Luca was like, I was barely touching you. She was like essentially doing Reiki, like, not on my body anymore. Yeah. Because her just having someone on your team where their presence,
their energy
allows you to let go.
Yes.
And, you know, it's not gonna, and a lot of people are like, oh, my husband is that person. It's like, no, your husband can have a different role, or that your husband could be that person, but
your husband needs support too.
Yes,
and I say that in postpartum all the time. Your husband can't be your postpartum doula because your husband needs a postpartum doula. Like, he's postpartum too, you know? Like, they're going through this, and it's really intense for them. Men need more support. It's like a whole nother.
Oh my gosh, have you been to Village Tea Hut yet?
No.
They're in Newport, and it's like a tea ceremony place.
Oh my gosh. My husband's British, and he would love that.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's a Chinese tea ceremony.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
He would love it.
Celeste.
And on Fridays, they do men's tea sits in the morning, so he should go.
Oh
I'm
my
like, gosh. My husband's gonna go.
He would love that.
I've been going for...
Okay, we need to connect them.
For years, and they own Sidecar Donuts.
Okay.
But Chi-Lin, the woman, she you know, felt so called to open that space for Orange County, because Venice has that, Ojai has that, a lot of places do, but just down here it's so special. And so anyone listening, like, there is a huge community for tea ceremony, and it goes along with you mentioning just taking a step back and slowing down your life. And some people want guided meditations or an active meditation, and I would say a tea ceremony is an active meditation. And Global Tea Hut is the movement and community, and through Global Tea Hut, a lot of these places have opened up through their support. They do trainings online.
Wow.
You're about to get trained in tea ceremonies.
That's my next thing. That's my next thing. And I just keep tacking them on.
I know.
But they're great.
It, though. Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
It's amazing.
Well, these are things that we would have learned if we were living in a village, and you know, we grew up actually learning these skills that were going to benefit us, but instead we you know, go to school under fluorescent light, and we just learn how to comply. And so we don't learn the things that are going to move us forward and make it so that we don't need to maybe do the DNC or the IVF, and maybe it is part of your story. And like epidural, you know, I didn't want that, and that was part of my story. When I had my son, and
same.
And it taught me a lot about like letting go and trusting myself, because I didn't go into my birth trusting myself, and I thought like you know, I was like, I'm so holistic. I do Kundalini yoga every day, and I do this, and I do tea ceremonies, and I know everything, and I can totally let go, and I'm a yogi. And but then I like went in there, and I was like, oh my God, like dying after 36 hours.
Feeling your power being taken from you is something that I don't want anybody to experience, you know, and I think that's a big passion behind even Lindsay's practice, you know, and that's really inspired me. I mean, amongst her like massive capacity to just love everybody and give so much love to people. But it's like this empowerment of like, you should never have your power taken from you, ever. And you can get it back if you do. It's that both and, right? And like exploring all healing with a both and mindset is always going to be nice. Like, I am hurting and, you know, I'm still empowered in my body. I am losing a baby and I am able to process through this and, you know, move forward or whatever. Like, I would always just focus in on that. Like, they both can live together. And that's not easy to do. I think we talk about that a lot as like, healers or healing people, like, it can live together. And then there's kind of like a period at the end of the sentence, and it's like, it can live together, both, and it's very hard. It's not easy. And it's okay if it's not easy for you, you know?
I know we have the capacity to have so many emotions at once, even like just outside of the healing, but even watching our parents as I've been watching my parents when I had my son. He was the first grandchild, and my dad was in a space where he would come visit us and had so much joy and so much love, and then he would go see his mom, and she was passing away, and she passed away 6 months after my son was born, and he was in this, you know, this space of being in just having deep joy and gratitude, and also gratitude for having his mom live for so long and having this relationship with her, but deep pain of watching her deteriorate and not recognize anyone, and having Alzheimer's, and you know, it's like, but there's that dichotomy, like we experience that in life, and it's beautiful, and it's also another thing of like, actually it's so funny that you said that, because my doctor, he always says and like, he was my mentor, and I for a couple years, like I did a whole mentorship with him, and he would say, even when you talk to others, your employees, people that you have relationship with, you say and, you don't say but. And so it's a way to talk to ourselves. It's a way for us to experience life in general, and to talk to others.
I think it breeds a lot of compassion, right? Like that's like the basis of like where it comes from. And I think when you're authentic and you're like living in your truth, I think that breeds connection, and then like through that connection, then you're able to move through compassion. But you can't like give compassion to others if you can't give it to the parts of yourself, right? I don't know if you're familiar with internal family systems, but
oh my gosh,
parts
no.
work. Oh yeah, you have to go.
Wow.
You have to dive into that. But that's the type of therapy that I did prior to getting pregnant with Poet, which is my daughter. And it's all about the parts inside of you, and like having compassion and allowing them to live within you. Just like you're saying, you know, your dad's experiencing this like part of him that's grieving, and then this part of him that's joy, and they can absolutely coexist in harmony if you have compassion for them and allow them to. But when you're trying to be like, no, don't feel that, or don't, you know, shush, or whatever, that's when like things get really sticky, and you just kind of get lost in yourself, and you end up in like this protector place where you're constantly trying to protect yourself. And it's really intense. You'd love that. You would
internal
love it.
Family
internal
system.
Family systems.
I love that.
Anyone out there? Internal family systems.
Yeah, and it goes along with just healing in general. I remember one aspect of my healing journey was like dealing with candida years ago, like decades ago, and it was like, this candida needs to go, I need to kill it, you know, and it was like all about killing the candida. But I'm like, okay, well, candida does live in the body, and there are normal levels of bad bacteria and fungus and all these things, and we can coexist, and actually that's not the real problem, isn't the candida, it's this other, you know, and totally. It just all goes hand in hand.
Yeah, it really
does. But I
does.
think like brushing things under the rug and suppressing all of that, like you said, is just the old school way of dealing with things, that instead of being like, okay, I can feel this. And we can all experience.
Your cells are listening.
Yeah.
That's what one of the people that I worked with when I was healing, she's like, your cells are listening.
That's beautiful.
Your cells are listening. You have to work with them. And doing that, you know, like in that first year, like I said, I was just in this like, what's wrong with me? My body is failing me. And I would like say stuff like that. And your cells are listening. So then when I got pregnant with Poet, or before even, I would like write these Post-its, and I would post them all over. And they would say, I will have a healthy baby. My womb is a healthy, happy place for a baby to grow. I will give birth. Like my body is working just as it should. And I like put them everywhere, because I was like, I just had that natural kind of like instinct to just try and make myself not feel pain, which is when we're doing that, we're just like trying to pad it, right? Like, well, it's probably not going to work out. Well, I probably won't get pregnant. Well, I probably thinking like that's going to help us be in less pain. It doesn't work. We still feel a lot of pain when it doesn't work out. But I felt like it was really helpful for me to just really hone in on those affirmations. I would even write down on a piece of paper in my pregnancy with Poet my actual fear. Like I would actually like put it on paper, like really intense, like my baby is gonna die. And then like next to it, I'd be like, no. Like, and I would write an affirmation like, my body is healthy and happy and working in harmony and my baby is growing. And then I would put like, and today I'm pregnant. And every day I would do that. Today I'm pregnant.
What would you do with the Post-it?
That was in a journal.
Oh, in a journal.
Yeah.
Aww.
So that was in a journal where I would write down my fear, and then next to it I would write an affirmation or a truth, because that wasn't true. It was just a fear. So then I would write next to it like an actual truth or, you know, a positive feeling or whatever. So I highly recommend doing that in a pregnancy post-loss and allowing it to get out, you know. And you don't want to, like you said, you don't want to suppress your fears either and be like, don't think that. So it was helpful to kind of get it out in physical paper, and you can like burn it. You can, you know, you hear people do that all the time to physically be like, okay, I'm letting this go. But yeah, it worked. Ended up having Poet, and she's
I'm so happy
amazing
for you.
at home.
Are you gonna have more?
I would love to have more.
Aww.
I have to convince my husband.
Yeah, it's
mostly because the pregnancy was a lot. Like he had a really hard time. He like really struggled with the fear of losing her. Yeah. And that was a lot for him. He's experienced a lot of loss in his life already. And so he definitely battles that fear of loss. And so that was like really intense. And it was really hard on our marriage also, for those listening. Like it took a massive hit on our marriage. So we worked with a marriage therapist, and we're still working with him.
What was, like, if you're open to sharing, like, what was the most difficult aspect of it? Did you feel like not heard or not seen? Or
I felt like a burden. Like I was like, I'm a burden. I'm causing him pain. He cannot show up for me. He doesn't have the capacity to show up for me. And I'm just a weight, you know, and that's how I felt. It was awful, an awful feeling. It wasn't true, obviously. Mm-hmm. He loves me very much, but which is like kind of a parts thing, like internal family systems, like I was saying, he had to go into a protecting place.
Yes.
He had to, because it was so hard and so painful. He needed to almost like distance himself from me. He actually ended up going on like a men's retreat in Colorado. Wow. When I was pregnant, because he's like, I need to like be in nature and like I need a minute, you know, like this is just a lot. And I was really sick. I was really sick. So it just, for him in his life, the only time anyone's ever gotten sick and been puking, whatever, physically sick, they've passed away. He has a lot of loss. So it was very triggering for him. So, and I felt that. I'm like, I'm just a trigger. Like I'm a trigger for him. And I like just felt a lot of guilt and that burdenness, which I already dealt with. And a lot of us do as women, feeling like a burden. Mm-hmm. What the fuck is that? Mm-hmm. Anyway, working through that. But yeah, I just had to like really move through that. And then for him, it was that I wasn't me. Like I couldn't do the things that I normally do. And I support our family. You know, I'm sure, as you probably are too, but I'm the like regulator of our home. Mm-hmm. I regulate us. And so if I'm sick in bed and our toddler's going crazy or whatever, you know, and there was just a lot that kind of like fell apart that I don't think he could see ahead of time that it would come back together. Yeah, he was just like in it. Yeah, he was like in it. And it was really hard. It was really hard. Well, but we've healed. We've healed. And it's taken time for us to heal our marriage.
I'm sure.
It really has, especially then jumping into postpartum.
Yeah, a lot. Mm-hmm. But now look at you.
I know.
Supporting others.
So more kids, taking some time. Yeah. We're taking some time.
Yeah.
I do feel like there's another spirit. It's hard with the losses, I will admit, because I lost 3, right? And so I got 1, and now I'm like, are there 2 more? Like, how does this feel for me? And how do I view the spiritual aspect of these losses? And, you know, so it's something I'm working through, but I'm taking my time.
Oh my gosh, you should. I haven't done it yet, but my old nanny, who supports my sister now, but she's supported so many people through her time just being with families, but she also is just like a master at holding space, and she also does mushroom journeys for people. But I'm like, that sounds like something to explore while on a journey to meet the spirits, maybe. And I haven't done it with her yet. My mom did, and like my mom and I didn't have a relationship for 18 months, and I felt I was like very upset with her, and I felt like she should be reaching out to me because she was the one that it was like a whole thing. And I invited her to be part of my daughter's birth, and she didn't come, and it was like a whole thing. I felt abandoned, but I was the one that was mad and didn't want a relationship with her, but I wanted her to want one with me. It was like a whole thing. Anyways, we like decided, or we spoke again. One day my sister was like really trying to get me to talk to her, and Matthew and Teresi from Cafe Gratitude, they Teresi officiated my husband and I's wedding, so she kind of had this like backstory of knowing his family and my family and all the things, and I did a podcast with them, and I was like, I'm not talking to her still, and they're like they follow the landmark framework of like speaking and communicating is what I should say, and they were like, you need to make a request. And I was like, oh my God, I totally forgot about making requests. So I made a request to my mom, and I was like, I'm requesting that you make an apology because of these reasons, and I want to make an apology if I ever hurt you. That's not my intention. It's that like I needed boundaries.
Right. It was a protector part.
And I was like, but my other request is that if we have a relationship again, you commit to like start working on yourself, because all this trauma has happened to you, and this is why this other thing happened, and you know, I will connect you with Luca, like all these things. So she started working with Luca, she started working with the chiropractor, she did mushrooms with Maggie. And like it's just like another person, and her journey was just sounded so insane and so beautiful, and I was just like, these healing plants and these different types of healing modalities really have, you know, make such an impact. But what reminded me is that and I've said this out loud in a different podcast, that my mom had an abortion after me. But I've heard, and obviously that's completely different, like energy and frequency than a miscarriage.
It is and it isn't.
But like, she just like me, it's about like just that spirit, you know, and thinking of that spirit and meeting that spirit, and and so she has had those experiences lately, like talking to me about it, and it's so interesting. Like every time she does something in the healing realm, and she's like gone hard on it, like kind of like you, where you're doing you were doing all the things, like she's been going hard. And
my mom became a therapist. Like my mom went back to school in her 40s and became a marriage and family therapist, and she's an IFS therapist. Like we have so many parallels. Cool. It's crazy. I really feel like that. Crazy. It's wild. Anyways, keep talking.
So anyways, I don't know, I interviewed Zach Bush one time, and we were talking about abortion. I asked him what he thought about all that, and he started telling me about women who have done ayahuasca or mushrooms and meeting that spirit and that experience. And so I'm curious what it would be like to be someone not who's had an abortion, chosen an abortion, but who's experienced pregnancy loss and going through. So you'll have to let us know if you've done it or report back.
I would love to do that. I would love to do that. I definitely feel that lingering like feeling of the number, you know, of the like that, like those were spirits, and I just feel like I still feel them, as opposed to some women have documented like feeling like the spirit tried to come and then they experienced pregnancy loss and then tried to come again. And they experienced loss or whatever. And then it like just never worked out or whatever it may be. I don't know. But for me personally, in like my spiritual journey, I felt like that they were different and different genders. Like that's what was kind of weird to me. Like even when my daughter, I knew that it was her. And when we found out she was a girl, I just knew it. And also felt like that was the second baby. Aww. So remember how I said I was sitting there on my birthday reading a poetry book? I ended up having my daughter on my birthday, May 6th, and I named her poet 2 years later. Guys,
That's crazy.
It's crazy. You just never know what's working, right? And so I definitely
just got the chills because like what an intentional moment for you. And
crazy.
Then,
she was late too. She was. It's not. She was due in April. But yeah.
Wait. She was born May 6th?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Wait, I didn't capture that part. I just thought, wait. Stop.
So we have this, I literally woke up on my birthday this last year and was like, oh my gosh, she's coming today. Yeah. And Lindsay showed up. She's like, it's your birthday. I'm like, I know. This is crazy. And I had her, and I said I was going to have her at either 56 is like my lucky number because that's my birthday, 5/6. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to have her like at like 5:56 or 6:56 or something like that. And I technically had her at 6:56, but she was stuck. And I had shoulder dystocia, which is like crazy. And it was a painful, wild 3 minutes of 2 midwives like helping her out. She just needed a little ushering. She was 10-2.
Wow.
Big baby. So we weren't surprised. But so she ended up being born at 6:58, but still 5/6 in there. I'm like, I know it. This is just crazy. Aww. So yeah, my girl, and I was born 30 minutes before my mom's birthday. Isn't that wild? So we all share a birthday.
Those parallels are wild. Have you talked to Luca about these?
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. Those We're like, this is like really lineage burden breaking. Like we're like this. I feel like it's all about breaking lineage burden. This particular stuff, but so wild. So I really feel like it was that baby. Like strongly feel like that spirit came back 2 years later.
Yeah. So me. You're like, are the other ones going to come back, or are they just there for that time?
Yeah, and I think it's okay not to know. You know, I'm also like in that space where I'm like, I'm happy with kind of like flowing right now, and have also found so much healing in flowing. Like I said, it's the grief dance, right? Like at first you're just like, you're resistant to each other, you're getting to know each other, it kind of hurts, they're moving quick, you want to go slow, whatever. And then as you just release into it, you can flow much better with any feeling. Not just grief, you know what I mean? Yeah. We're dancing with our parts and having compassion for them. So, anyways.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. And how can people connect with you?
Instagram is great. My website is Our Growing Abode, which I started when my family was growing. Crazily enough, I had a blog, and so I started it when we got pregnant for the second time because I was like, oh, we're a growing family, and I always wanted 4 kids, and so I'm like, I'll share like all things motherhood and like, you know, growing as a family, what it looks like to grow as a family and connect with other women. And so I never thought that it would evolve into being much more about postpartum support, hormone support. I share a lot of resources on my Instagram, especially in my highlights about hormone health and thyroid health. I share about my journey. I share a lot of home birth stuff, a lot of nourishment and recipes and all things. So that's kind of where you can DM me. I love connecting over experience and sharing, and I love supporting. I've been supporting women going through pregnancy loss for a couple of years now, and it's really, really beautiful to do. And I even said to my husband, I'm like, I guess I'm kind of like feel like a pregnancy loss doula. At this point, because I just, so yeah, if you need support, please reach out.
Can you like coin that term? Like, right? Is that a thing? Like, yeah, I feel like
it's a term I don't want, it's like such a hard thing to be like, but we have to stop with the taboo. And also, can we just talk about how everything that we want to like bring to light? They're like, this awareness, no, we need more than awareness. Like, there's a lot of pregnancy loss awareness, but we need support in connection.
Well, I mean, that just trying to normalize it. Like, that's all they're doing is just normalizing it. Oh, yeah, many women go through that. That's totally...
Yeah, we don't need to normalize it anymore. We need to connect on it, and we need support and being held, I don't need people to tell me, this is what happened. It's like, okay, now what? And that's where we get lost, is figuring out the next step. And sometimes the next step is being held by somebody, and supporting you. So
that can be
that's what I'm trying to do.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining
Thank you for having me.
and I hope I have you on again.
Me too. It was an honor.